No force rises by chance. Just as the body cannot gain strength without repeated trials, a navy does not ascend to blue water status without decades of consistent effort. Vikrant was not built in a moment. It was designed over years, tested, delayed, refined. This patience reflects an ancient truth. Mastery is not achieved when we wish for it, but when we train for it. The steel in Vikrant mirrors the discipline of its makers. The refusal to compromise on excellence, that is what made this ship not only a machine, but a symbol, and like all symbols, it radiates not just power, but purpose. In life, what we create is always a mirror of who we are. And just like an individual who walks the path of self-cultivation, a nation too must walk the path of rigorous preparation before it can stand with confidence upon the world stage. Vikrant stands today not because India had the resources alone, but because it first had the resolve. Resolve to discipline itself, to rise above past constraints, to move beyond dependency, to become its own architect. In that way, Vikrant is more than an aircraft carrier. It is a demonstration of internal mastery, made visible through engineering. When we observe a martial artist executing a flawless movement, we do not see the years of effort, pain, and failure that led to that precision. Yet, that is where the truth lies. The quiet hours of training, the repetition of basics, the humility to fail again and again until mastery emerges. This is also how Vikrant was born. Before the first steel plate was laid, before the hull took shape, before the engines roared to life, there was only intent. A disciplined, unwavering intent, refined over time into a national objective. That intent passed through hundreds of minds, thousands of hands, and millions of moments. Each decision, from design to deployment, required discipline, of thought, of process, of leadership. Without that, there would be no carrier. Just as the warrior cannot summon skill in the heat of battle if he has not bled in training, so too can a nation not create greatness in times of urgency unless it has quietly prepared for years. This is the discipline that forges mastery. Mastery is never about shortcuts. It is about choosing the long, often unrewarding path, because that path leads to true strength. India could have continued purchasing carriers from abroad. That would have been simpler, faster, but mastery is not in acquisition. It is in creation. To build from scratch, to accept the delays, the technical failures, the budget overruns, the criticism, the national doubts. That is the test of discipline, and India passed it. Each time the project faltered, it rose again. Each delay became a lesson, each problem became a teacher. This is the way of true progress, not to avoid the storm, but to become the one who sails through it. Vikrant is not the end of a journey, it is a beginning that came only because the steps were taken with unyielding focus and perseverance. Discipline also means restraint. To build a weapon and use it wisely. To have power and not flaunt it. To carry the ability to project force across oceans and yet remain anchored in responsibility. This is a higher form of discipline. Vikrant is not a showpiece. It is a guardian. And behind it stands a navy that has been forged by patient growth, doctrinal evolution, and strategic maturity. Every sailor who steps aboard that deck carries the invisible weight of generations of effort. Every aircraft that takes off from her runway is not just machinery in motion, it is discipline in action. The type of discipline that keeps a crew alert during months at sea, that maintains precision even when no one is watching, that sustains order amidst the unpredictability of the ocean. It is the same discipline found in ancient monasteries and martial arts schools, where repetition builds not only skill, but character. In the process of building Vikrant, India did not merely overcome external limitations, it overcame internal ones. The doubts that whispered, "You cannot." The voices that said, "This is too ambitious." The fears of failure that haunt every great endeavor. These were silenced not by shouting back, but by working in silence. Slowly, deliberately, without seeking applause. The shipyard workers, the naval engineers, the designers, the welders, the administrators, they all became part of a greater movement, a movement of national self-discipline. This is why Vikrant resonates so deeply, not because it is large or modern, but because it is disciplined effort, forged in form. One does not become a master by winning once. Mastery is the habit of excellence, repeated consistently. Vikrant marks a point in India's naval history, not because it changed the world in a single stroke, but because it marked the culmination of decades of naval evolution. From the era of INS Vikrant, R11 acquired from the British, to now an indigenously built carrier sailing under the tricolor flag. That arc of transformation is not accidental. It reflects a discipline of vision, and vision without discipline is just a dream. But disciplined vision becomes destiny. This ship, now operational, required India to coordinate dozens of industries, countless technologies, multiple arms of government and military command. That orchestration is the outcome of a disciplined nation. One that refuses to be fragmented by its complexity and instead uses its complexity to fuel innovation. When a person chooses a disciplined path, their surroundings may not change immediately, but in time the world must respond. Likewise, India's decision to commit to domestic carrier building shifted not only its future, but the way other nations viewed it. No longer merely a regional player with borrowed platforms, India became a sea power with its own foundation. And that shift, just as a monk's quiet presence in a chaotic room can influence others without speaking a word, the very presence of Vikrant in international waters sends a message, not of threat, but of capacity, of readiness, of independence. Such silent messages are only possible when discipline has been practiced for long enough that it becomes presence. True discipline is not forced. It comes from clarity. Clarity about what must be done, what must be endured, what must be ignored, and what must be honored. India's path to Vikrant required clarity on all fronts: strategic, economic, political, and technical. Clarity that this was not merely about building a ship, but about building belief. The belief that the nation is capable, responsible, and sovereign in the domain of blue water power. That clarity birthed the discipline, and the discipline, maintained over decades, gave birth to mastery. That mastery is now embodied in steel, but it began in spirit. So when the sun reflects off the deck of INS Vikrant, when the engines roar across the sea, and when the sailors march along her corridors, they do not merely enact duties. They embody a discipline that began long before them and will continue long after. This is what it means to become a master of the seas. Not to conquer them, but to serve them with discipline, awareness, and strength. Before India could control the seas, it had to command its own fears of dependence, of limitations, of historic setbacks. True transformation begins in the invisible. It is not the external that first changes, but the internal mindset. In choosing to build an aircraft carrier domestically, India committed to independence, not only in terms of engineering, but in spirit. This inward transformation reshaped the outward reality. Today, Vikrant sails not as a copy of another nation's ship, but as the expression of India's own maritime identity. This shift was not simply technological, it was a shift of consciousness. A nation that once looked outward for its naval power now turned inward, asking not what could be imported, but what could be created. In life, all meaningful change begins with this question: what can I become if I no longer doubt who I am? This is the question that India answered, not with speeches or slogans, but with steel, fire, and focused will. To transform is to look into the mirror and confront both one's potential and one's fear. For decades, India operated under the shadow of colonial infrastructure, dependent on foreign designs, imported technologies, borrowed doctrines. But there comes a moment in any disciplined journey when one must cease to imitate and begin to create. That moment came with Vikrant. The decision to build her indigenously was not simply a technical one, it was a psychological turning point. It required the nation to believe in its own capacity before that belief was proven. This is how transformation begins, not with results, but with faith. Faith in the unseen, faith in the path, faith in the internal strength that has not yet fully emerged but must be trusted nonetheless. This transformation was not sudden. Like the slow turning of a tide, it began subtly, often invisibly. Policies were rewritten, industrial ecosystems were developed, strategic doctrines were reassessed. But underneath it all was the quiet internal revolution. The belief that India need not ask permission to be great. The belief that self-reliance is not a dream, but a discipline. And like all disciplines, it must be cultivated over time. No single ship can create such transformation on its own. But one ship can imbibe the cumulative weight of a nation's inward evolution. Vikrant became that vessel, both literally and symbolically. Transformation also demands sacrifice. It asks us to let go of comforts and dependencies. To build Vikrant in India required choosing the difficult path, developing indigenous shipbuilding capacity, training thousands of skilled workers, establishing supply chains that had never existed before. There were mistakes, there were delays, there were frustrations. But these are not signs of failure. They are the necessary turbulence that comes with growth. In personal life, as in national development, transformation is not clean. It is messy, unpredictable, and often discouraging. But what matters is whether we stay the course. And India did. Because the goal was not merely to have a ship, but to become the kind of nation that could build one. Every rivet, every circuit, every welded joint in Insan's Vikrant tells a story not just of labor, but of belief. The belief of an engineer who chose to stay in India instead of working abroad. The belief of a naval officer who waited decades to see a dream materialize. The belief of a policymaker who argued for funding when others saw only risk. This collective faith, grounded in action, became transformation. And that transformation was inward first. The sea did not change. The world did not change. What changed was the internal compass, from one that pointed outward to one that pointed within. In many spiritual traditions, the journey of the seeker begins with self-doubt and ends with self-realization. Along the way, there are trials meant not to punish but to reveal. India's journey within Vikrant follows this path. It began with hesitation. Can we do this? Should we do this? But through the process of disciplined action, the answer emerged. Not from words, but from progress. Each successful test, each milestone reached, each system integrated, these were like small awakenings. Reminders that yes, the capacity exists, that the future need not look like the past, and that self-trust is the foundation upon which all transformation is built. There is also humility in this process. Transformation is not arrogance. It is not the belief that one is superior. It is the realization that one no longer needs comparison, that one has become whole in their own right. Vikrant was not built to compete with others. It was built to complete a journey. The journey from dependence to sovereignty, from imitation to originality, from inherited strength to cultivated strength. It was built so that India could look to the ocean and say, we are ready, not because others told us we were, but because we know we are. And such readiness comes only from deep internal transformation. Many nations possess ships, but not all ships possess. Vikrant carries within her the silent weight of generations, of dreamers, warriors, builders, thinkers, who envisioned a day when India would no longer need to borrow its strength. That day came not through sudden achievement, but through patient transformation. And that transformation was internal. The external follows. It always does. But it is the internal that leads. To build anything of value, one must first believe they are worthy of it. This belief is not loud. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It is the kind of belief that does not collapse under criticism or failure. It is not inflated ego, it is anchored identity. The belief that we are enough. And when that belief takes root, what follows is creation. First in the mind, then in the world. Vikrant is a creation that began in the mind of a nation that was ready to stop doubting itself. True transformation is irreversible. Once you have seen your own strength, you cannot unsee it. Once a nation has created its own path, it no longer needs to follow others. Vikrant does not just represent a shift in naval capacity. It represents a point of no return. A place from which India will never again say, we cannot. And in that sense, her value goes far beyond her tonnage, speed, or firepower. Her value lies in what she awakened within. In the world of form, transformation often looks like construction, but in the world of essence, it looks like awakening. India awakened to its potential by choosing to walk the harder path, the path of building rather than buying, the path of leading rather than following, the path of trusting rather than doubting. That path is not just a national one, it is universal. It is the path walked by every individual who has ever chosen to rise above their circumstances and meet their higher self. Vikrant is not just a ship. She is a milestone on that eternal path. A reminder that transformation begins not with what we have, but with what we believe we can become. The seas are ever changing. Waves do not follow orders. And in this uncertainty, the strongest are those who adapt without losing their core. Vikrant is not merely a warship. It is a floating fortress of learning, designed to evolve. It can launch modern fighters, support electronic warfare, and integrate systems yet to be developed. This is the essence of strength, not rigidity, but readiness. In life, as on the sea, we cannot resist the tide, but we can be trained to ride it. Vikrant was created with this lesson in mind. What is prepared adapts. What is rigid breaks. This principle is not new. It has guided warriors, leaders, and monks across centuries. But its application in a modern technological context shows that ancient wisdom still holds true. Adaptation is not weakness, it is wisdom in motion. The ability to absorb change and still maintain direction is the mark of those who endure and grow. When we observe the design of Vikrant, we see more than engineering. We see foresight. She was not built for yesterday's battles. She was built to serve in the unpredictable ocean of tomorrow. Her structure allows for future upgrades, modular integration of weapons and sensors, flexibility in mission profiles, and the ability to evolve with the rapid pace of naval warfare. This forward-thinking design is not merely technological sophistication, it is the embodiment of adaptive thinking. And adaptive thinking is born from humility, the recognition that we do not control the world, but we can prepare ourselves to meet it, no matter how it changes. Just as water flows around obstacles and adjusts to the shape of its container, so too must a ship and the nation behind it remain fluid yet focused. Adaptation also comes from observation. India did not rush blindly into building its Vikrant. It watched, studied, absorbed the lessons of other navies, and then applied those insights in a way that suited its own needs, geography, and strategic goals. This is intelligent adaptation, not mere imitation, but integration. Taking what works, discarding what doesn't, and creating something new from the balance. It is a form of alchemy, and just like a martial artist who learns from many schools but finds his own form, India created a carrier that is not a clone of others, but a reflection of its own evolving identity. That process required courage. The courage to learn, to change, to be open, and to risk failure in the pursuit of growth. In the human experience, those who resist change are often left behind, but those who welcome change as a teacher find in it endless opportunities to refine themselves. Vikrant is a national reflection of this mindset. The ship was delayed, revised, redesigned. Each change was not a setback, but a chance to adapt, to make better decisions, to respond to new realities. This mirrors life itself. We make plans, life intervenes, and in the space between what we imagined and what unfolds, we either complain or we adapt. It is the latter that transforms us. It is the latter that builds resilience, and resilience is the seed of mastery. Adaptation also speaks of resilience under pressure. The environment at sea is unforgiving. Salt corrodes, storms threaten, isolation challenges the human spirit. Insa Vikrant, by design and by training, is built to endure. Her crew must be prepared not only in tactics, but in mindset, to adapt to long deployments, shifting missions, uncertain threats. This type of adaptation is not superficial. It is deep and psychological. It requires flexibility not just in tools, but in thoughts. And a nation that fosters such readiness in its forces does not simply prepare for battle, it prepares for survival, for longevity, for meaningful presence. The carrier is also a platform of possibilities. It is not limited to one role. It can lead combat operations, support humanitarian missions, deliver aid in disaster zones, and provide a deterrent through presence alone. This range of roles is possible because Vikrant was designed with a heart that beats not just for war, but for service. And service, too, requires adaptation. To serve others is to be ready for what they need, not just what we are comfortable giving. The same ship that carries fighter jets can carry relief supplies. The same deck that launches weapons can launch hope. This is not contradiction, it is completeness. And completeness only comes to those who are willing to adapt to the full spectrum of life. When we look at the philosophical core of adaptability, we find surrender, not to defeat, but to the truth of change. To accept that what was sufficient yesterday may not serve tomorrow. To remain humble in the face of uncertainty and strong in the face of chaos. Vikrant is not frozen in time. She is alive with the spirit of evolution. Her systems can be updated, her missions can change, her meaning can expand. She is a moving metaphor for how a nation must approach the world, not with rigid pride, but with open eyes and strong roots. Adaptation does not mean abandoning one's values. It means expressing those values in new ways as the world requires. In every field of excellence, adaptability is the difference between survival and extinction. The greatest warriors are those who can change their tactics without changing their principles. The greatest leaders are those who can shift direction without losing purpose. And the greatest ships are those that can evolve while remaining centered in their identity. Vikrant is built upon this truth. She is not static, she is responsive. Every voyage will teach her, every mission will refine her, every challenge will improve her. This is why she is more than a vessel. She is a symbol of what it means to grow while remaining grounded. Adaptation also requires cooperation. A single system does not adapt alone. It must communicate, coordinate, and align with others. In Vikrant, every radar, engine, weapon system and control panel must work together to face evolving challenges. And so it is with people, so it is with nations. A truly adaptive system is not fragmented. It is unified in diversity. And that unity, when it adapts as one, becomes strength. The crew of Vikrant must function like a single organism, able to respond to the unexpected with calm, precision, and awareness. This capacity does not arise from chance, it arises from training, from internal discipline, from the daily effort to remain flexible without losing form. Ultimately, the power of adaptation lies not just in the ability to change, but in the ability to grow from change, to become stronger, wiser, more capable, each time the environment demands something new. Inside Vikrant's success is not in her first voyage alone, but in her ability to meet the unknown voyages ahead. The world is shifting, technologies evolve, threats mutate, alliances shift. And in the center of this flux, India has placed a ship that can move with the times, learn from the times, and lead through the times. This is what adaptation looks like when it is guided by intelligence and anchored in purpose. Not through reaction, but through readiness. She reminds us all that the most powerful entities in any domain are not the ones who resist change, but the ones who prepare for it. To be like water, not soft, but unstoppable. To be like the sea, not predictable, but enduring. To be like the disciplined soul, not fixed in form, but firm in essence. This is what Vikrant was built to be. And this is what we, too, must learn to become. A nation's strength is not measured solely by its weapons, but by the vision that wields them. Vikrant is more than a naval achievement. It is a declaration of intent. It speaks not only of India's maritime capability, but of its readiness to shape the seas, not just sail them. True power does not boast. It stands calmly, confident in its purpose. When Vikrant enters the waters, it does not shout its presence, it asserts it. As if it said, "I'm here and this is my purpose." It asserts it. It asserts it. It asserts it. And it asserts it. And it asserts it. And it asserts it. Presence is power. The presence of Vikrant transforms how nations calculate, how strategies unfold, how balance is maintained. Because when one nation develops the ability to project force far from its own shores, it reshapes the geometry of security across an entire region. This is not about domination, it is about responsibility. With reach comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes the discipline to wield strength, not for intimidation, but for stability. In the philosophy of mastery, there comes a moment when the practitioner no longer performs for display. The movements become simple, the mind becomes still, but the presence, quiet yet undeniable, becomes more powerful than noise. Vikrant represents such mastery in the making. She does not exist to threaten, she exists to prevent. The very presence of a carrier group at sea creates a zone of caution for potential conflict. It holds back aggression not by firing, but by being there. This is the silent force of deterrence, the power that does not destroy because it has already neutralized the need for destruction. This is the level of strategic maturity that Vikrant brings to India's defense posture, a power that does not arise from fear, but from clarity. Presence also signifies commitment. When a nation positions a carrier in a region, it signals more than interest, it signals resolve. This resolve cannot be faked. It is built upon layers of planning, logistics, doctrine, and diplomacy. Vikrant allows India to show this resolve, not just to adversaries, but to allies, not just in times of crisis, but in times of calm. It is a statement that India is not only a continental power, but a maritime one. That it is not only focused on its borders, but on the blue spaces that connect the world. Such presence elevates India from a regional observer to a regional anchor. And in a world where maritime trade, migration and security increasingly shape the future, this shift is both timely and necessary. But presence is not achieved by the ship alone. It is supported by vision. A ship must know why it sails, not just where. Vikrant's presence reflects a larger Indian vision, a vision of secure sea lanes, balanced partnerships, peaceful engagement, and a multilateral order. A vision that does not seek to impose, but to contribute, to protect not only its own interests, but the shared goods of the global commons. In this way, presence becomes purpose, and purpose transforms a warship into a guardian, into a servant of peace through strength, into a symbol of India's role as a stabilizing power in a turbulent sea. Presence also tests discipline. A carrier is a moving city, a concentrated force of technology, training, and tension. To command such a vessel without losing control of one's intentions is the mark of refined strategy. Vikrant's operations demand coordination between air, sea, and undersea assets, real-time decision-making under pressure, and continuous awareness of regional dynamics. Such complexity can lead to confusion in the unprepared, but to those trained in clarity, it becomes symphony. The presence of Vikrant demands this clarity in leadership, in purpose, and in restraint. This is the difference between possession and possession with awareness, between strength and enlightened strength. The presence of Vikrant also shifts perceptions, how the world sees India, how India sees itself. A nation that once looked primarily inward now looks outward with steadiness. A nation that once responded now initiates. This shift is not aggressive, it is not reactionary, it is responsible. Vikrant allows India to show up where it matters, when it matters, in ways that matter. She allows India to provide aid in disaster zones, security in contested waters, and reassurance to partners who seek balance in the face of great power competition. Presence, then, becomes a promise to act when needed, a promise to lead. But presence must be sustained, and that requires more than a single ship. It requires infrastructure, policy, alliances, and endurance. Vikrant is the tip of a larger transformation, the visible form of an invisible ecosystem that India is building to support its maritime rise. Dockyards, training academies, satellite networks, intelligence gathering, supply chains, diplomatic ties. These are the foundations upon which presence is sustained, like the roots of a great tree that are unseen yet essential. Presence without preparation is provocation, but presence built on preparation becomes protection. Vikrant reminds us that what is seen depends upon what is unseen, and the invisible preparation is the soul of strategic presence. In the presence of Vikrant, adversaries pause, allies engage, and the environment adjusts, because power that is centered is not easily shaken. A ship of this stature does not merely react to threats, it reshapes the environment so that threats think twice. This is the power of influence without confrontation, a lesson that applies in every domain of life. Where you are, how you stand, what energy you carry, these things change the space around you. Presence is not noise, it is essence. And when that essence is rooted in purpose, it becomes unshakable. Vikrant's presence also reflects confidence. Not arrogance, but quiet confidence. The kind that does not seek to dominate, but does not back down. The kind that knows its strength, but does not flaunt it. The kind that is ready, but not restless. This is the spirit in which Vikrant sails, and this is the spirit India must carry. Firm, not forceful. Calm, not complacent. Aware, not afraid. Such presence brings peace not only to the region, but within, because a nation at peace with its power does not need to prove itself, it simply expresses itself, authentically, consistently, purposefully. And finally, presence invites reflection. Just as the ocean reflects the sky, so too does a ship like Vikrant reflect the character of the nation behind her. Is the power used wisely? Is the vision clear? Is the discipline intact? These questions must be asked continuously, because presence is not permanent unless it is maintained. Vikrant will age, technologies will change, but the spirit she represents, the spirit of purposeful presence, must endure. And that endurance comes not from steel, but from spirit. Not from engines, but from ethics. Not from might, but from meaning. The presence of INS Vikrant, therefore, is not just a geopolitical event. It is a philosophical stance, a decision to show up with strength, with purpose, with clarity. A reminder that to be present is to be responsible. To be visible is to be accountable. And to lead is not merely to move ahead, but to guide others through example. Vikrant's journey across the seas is, then, a journey across consciousness, an outward voyage fueled by inward intention. And in that, she becomes more than a ship. She becomes a symbol of presence, perfected.